Most people think gaining weight is their fault, but what if your body has been programmed to store fat long before you ever took your first bite today? Right now in the United States, over 40% of adults are overweight, and nearly 1 in 3 is clinically obese, numbers that have surged over the last few decades, despite more diets, more workouts, and more solutions than ever before. But here's the part no one can easily explain. In Japan, that number is still under 5%. Same modern world, same access to food, yet a completely different biological outcome. So let me ask you something directly. If you've been trying to eat better, cutting calories, forcing yourself to exercise, doing everything you've been told, why does your body keep pulling you back to the same weight, or worse? I'm Dr. Nathaniel Lee, an emergency medicine physician and medical researcher, and after nearly 30 years of watching patients struggle with weight, metabolic disease, and repeated cycles of failure, I started to realize something deeply uncomfortable. This isn't just about discipline, and it's not just about calories. What I discovered is that your body is constantly responding to hidden biological signals that tell your fat cells whether to store energy or burn it, signals that control your hunger, your cravings, and even how efficiently your metabolism works at the cellular level. And if those signals are wrong, your body will fight you every step of the way. The most dangerous part, you won't feel it happening. The type of fat that builds up first isn't the kind you can pinch or see in the mirror. It's visceral fat, wrapping itself around your liver, your pancreas, your organs, silently driving inflammation, insulin resistance, and long-term disease. By the time most people notice a problem, that process has already been unfolding for years, and no amount of willpower can override a system that's been biologically misdirected. But here's where everything changes, and this is why you need to stay with me. There is a specific pattern of foods eaten daily in one of the healthiest populations on earth that has been shown to reset your gut microbiome, suppress fat storage, and reactivate your body's built-in fat-burning systems, not through extreme dieting, not through deprivation, but through targeted biological signals your body is designed to respond to. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what those foods are, how they work inside your body, and how you can start using them immediately to reverse the process that's been keeping you stuck. And once you understand this, you'll realize your body was never the problem. You were just given the wrong instructions. So if it's not just calories, what is your body actually responding to? After nearly 3 decades in emergency medicine, I kept seeing the same disturbing pattern. Patients would come in after doing everything they were told, cutting portions, following strict diets, forcing themselves through exhausting routines, and for a short time, the weight would drop. But then something predictable would happen. The weight came back faster, more aggressively, and far more resistant than before. At first, it looked like a discipline problem. That's the default assumption. But the more I observed, the less that explanation held up. These weren't people lacking effort. In many cases, they were trying harder than anyone else. And yet, their bodies behaved as if they were operating under a completely different rule book. That's when it became clear this wasn't a motivation issue, it was a biological miscommunication. Because your body doesn't respond to effort the way you think it does. It responds to signals. Every meal, every nutrient, every hormonal response sends instructions: store fat, burn energy, increase hunger, slow metabolism. And when those signals are even slightly distorted, your entire system shifts. Fat storage increases. Hunger becomes harder to control. Energy drops. This is the part most people never hear. Your body is not broken. It's following a program. And once that program is set, willpower alone cannot override it. So the real question is this: what if the difference between gaining fat and burning it has nothing to do with how much you eat, but everything to do with the signals controlling your body from within? So where are these signals actually coming from, and why are they so powerful that they can override everything you've been told about diet and exercise? The answer sits in a place most people never think about, yet it controls more of your metabolism than your brain does. It's your gut microbiome. And right now, whether you realize it or not, it may be the single biggest reason your body is storing fat instead of burning it. Inside your digestive system, you're not alone. You're carrying trillions of bacteria, an entire ecosystem that functions like a control center for your metabolism. Think of it as a factory that processes everything you eat and then sends instructions back to your body. In a healthy system, that factory is efficient. It extracts nutrients, regulates blood sugar, and most importantly, it sends clear signals that say, you're full, stop eating. But when that system is disrupted, and for most people today, it is the entire process breaks down. Because in a damaged gut environment, the wrong bacteria begin to dominate. And these bacteria don't just sit there passively. They actively influence your behavior and your biology. They increase hunger signals. They amplify cravings for sugar and processed foods. They trigger low-grade inflammation throughout your body. And most dangerously, they send signals that tell your body to store fat, especially around your internal organs. This is what's known as visceral fat, and here's why this matters more than anything you see in the mirror. You can't see visceral fat, you can't pinch it, but it wraps itself around your liver, your pancreas, your intestines, and it silently disrupts how your body functions. It releases inflammatory compounds called cytokines that interfere with insulin, damage blood vessels, and increase your risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and even certain cancers. And the most dangerous part is this: it builds quietly. There's no immediate warning, no sharp pain, no clear signal that something is going wrong. By the time most people realize they have a metabolic issue, this process has already been developing for years beneath the surface. That's why so many people feel like their weight suddenly got out of control. It didn't happen suddenly. It was happening silently. Now, here's where this becomes even more critical for you to understand. The modern Western diet, high in processed foods, refined sugars, and low in fiber, systematically destroys the beneficial bacteria your body depends on. It wipes out the good workers in that factory and replaces them with strains that promote fat storage and constant hunger. So even if you try to eat less, even if you push yourself to exercise, your internal system is still sending the wrong instructions. You're fighting your biology, and biology always wins. But here's the turning point, and this is where you need to stay with me. If your gut is the system controlling fat storage, then changing that system changes everything. This is exactly where the difference begins between populations that struggle with weight and those that don't. And once you understand how this internal factory can be rebuilt, how the signals can be corrected, you'll see why everything we've been told about weight loss is incomplete. So if this system inside you is really controlling fat storage, then we should be able to see it play out on a global scale. And that's exactly what the data shows. A large comparative analysis published in Nutrition Journal examined dietary patterns across 132 countries and found something impossible to ignore. The closer a population adhered to a traditional Japanese-style diet higher in fermented foods, fish, seaweed, and plant fiber, and lower in processed foods and excess red meat, the lower their obesity rates were, across every continent and economic level, not slightly lower, dramatically lower. Now here's the part that completely dismantles the "it's just genetics" argument. When Japanese individuals move to Western countries and adopt a Western diet, their rates of obesity and metabolic disease rise within a single generation. Same DNA, completely different outcome. That tells you something critical. This is not about who you are, it's about what your body is being exposed to every single day. And if that's true, then it leads to a far more powerful conclusion. Your metabolism is not fixed. It's responsive. It adapts to the signals you give it, which means the real leverage point isn't extreme dieting or willpower. It's changing the inputs that control the system. And once you shift those inputs, you don't just influence weight, you begin to reprogram how your body works at its core. So if your body is being controlled by signals, the real question is this: what can actually change those signals at the source? Because this is where everything starts to shift, and this is the part most people have never been told. One of the most powerful ways to reset your metabolism isn't cutting food, it's transforming it. Specifically, through a process that has been used for centuries, yet almost completely ignored in modern diets: fermentation. When I first started looking into traditional Japanese dietary patterns, I expected to find calorie differences or portion control strategies. But what stood out immediately was something far more interesting: a consistent presence of fermented foods, especially natto and miso, appearing not occasionally, but daily. And what these foods do inside your body goes far beyond basic nutrition. They don't just feed you, they reprogram the system that controls fat storage itself. Here's why that matters. Earlier, we talked about your gut microbiome, the ecosystem that determines whether your body stores fat or burns it. Fermented foods act directly on that system. They introduce beneficial bacteria that actively shift the balance inside your gut, changing the signals your body sends and receives. One of the key changes happens in the ratio between two major bacteria groups, Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes. Studies have consistently shown that people with higher levels of Firmicutes tend to store more fat, while higher levels of Bacteroidetes are associated with a leaner metabolic profile. Now, here's where it gets powerful. Regular consumption of fermented foods like natto has been shown to push that balance back toward a lean state, not by starving your body, not by forcing restriction, but by correcting the internal environment that determines how calories are handled in the first place. And this isn't theoretical. Research has demonstrated that fermented soy products can reduce visceral fat accumulation, suppress fat production in the liver, and increase fat breakdown at the cellular level. But the real mechanism goes even deeper than that, because fermentation doesn't just add bacteria, it transforms the food itself. Raw soybeans, for example, contain compounds that block nutrient absorption. But once fermented, those barriers are broken down, releasing bioactive compounds like isoflavones, enzymes like nattokinase, and a dense concentration of probiotics that your body can immediately use. In simple terms, what was once locked becomes biologically active. And this is the shift most people never make. They try to fix their metabolism by removing food, when in reality, the solution is adding the right signals back in. Fermented foods don't force your body to change, they guide it back to how it was designed to function. So instead of fighting your hunger, fighting your cravings, and fighting your body, imagine what happens when those signals start working for you instead of against you. And this is only the first layer, because even if you fix your gut, there's still another system that determines whether your body burns fat or stores it, and most people don't even know it exists. But even if you reset your gut and correct those internal signals, there's still another system that determines whether your body stores energy or actively burns it, and most people don't even know it exists. Because when it comes to fat, not all fat is the same. In fact, your body contains a specialized type of fat whose entire purpose is the opposite of what you've been taught. It doesn't store energy, it burns it constantly, aggressively. And en commun, this is known as brown adipose tissue, or brown fat. Unlike white fat, which accumulates around your waist, your organs, and under your skin, brown fat functions like a built-in metabolic engine. It generates heat by burning calories through a process called thermogenesis, essentially turning your body into its own fat-burning furnace. And here's the critical part: when this system is active, your body doesn't just burn the calories you eat. It begins to pull from stored fat as fuel. So the real question becomes, if you already have this system inside you, why isn't it working? And the answer is surprisingly simple. In most modern lifestyles, this system is almost completely inactive. It's not broken, it's just turned off. Sedentary behavior, highly processed diets, and constant exposure to artificial environments all contribute to suppressing this natural fat-burning pathway. But here's where the Japanese dietary pattern reveals something remarkable. There is a specific compound consumed daily in traditional Japanese culture that has been shown to directly activate this system. That compound is called EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate, and it's found in high concentrations in matcha green tea, but not the way most people consume it in the West. In Japan, matcha is consumed as a powdered form of the entire tea leaf, meaning you absorb significantly higher levels of these active compounds. And what EGCG does inside your body is extraordinary. It activates a protein called UCP1, which functions as a molecular switch that turns brown fat on. Once this switch is activated, your metabolism shifts, your body increases energy expenditure, enhances fat oxidation, and begins to operate in a state where burning fat becomes the default, not the exception. Even more interesting, this effect isn't driven by caffeine alone. Studies have shown that caffeine by itself produces little to no change in metabolic rate at comparable doses. It's the synergy between catechins like EGCG and your body's nervous system that amplifies fat-burning signals and sustains them over time. This is the second major shift most people miss. They focus on reducing calories when in reality, activating the systems that burn those calories is far more powerful. Because once this mechanism is turned on, you're no longer relying solely on effort, you're leveraging your biology. And when you combine this with a restored gut microbiome, something very different begins to happen. Your body is no longer stuck in storage mode. It becomes adaptive, responsive, and metabolically flexible. But even with both of these systems working, there's still one more factor that determines whether you overeat or naturally regulate intake, and this one might be the simplest of all. And even if you activate fat burning and reset your internal signals, there's still one critical question left. Why do you feel hungry in the first place? And why is it so hard to stop eating? Because this is where the simplest mechanism becomes one of the most powerful: fiber. Not as a trend, not as a supplement, but as a biological tool that directly controls your appetite at the source. When you consume fiber-rich foods, especially the types found in traditional Japanese diets like seaweed, root vegetables, and fermented plant sources, you're not just adding bulk to your meals. You're feeding the very bacteria that regulate your hunger hormone. These beneficial microbes ferment fiber and produce compounds called short-chain fatty acids, particularly butyrate, which play a direct role in signaling fullness to your brain. This is the shift most people never experience. Instead of forcing yourself to stop eating, your body begins to naturally reduce intake. Hunger stabilizes, cravings weaken, blood sugar becomes more consistent. And for the first time, you're not relying on discipline, you're relying on biology working the way it's supposed to. Because when your gut is properly fueled, your body doesn't demand excess, it regulates itself. And this is where everything begins to connect. Once hunger is controlled, fat burning is activated, and your internal signals are corrected, your metabolism stops fighting you and starts working with you. And if this still sounds too good to be true, then we need to look at what the data actually shows, because this isn't based on theory, it's been measured repeatedly under controlled conditions. In laboratory studies, subjects consuming fermented soy products like natto demonstrated significant reductions in visceral fat accumulation, along with decreased fatty acid synthesis in the liver and increased fat breakdown at the cellular level. These are not cosmetic changes, these are metabolic shifts that directly impact how your body handles energy. In parallel, controlled trials examining green tea extract rich in EGCG showed a measurable increase in 2-4-hour energy expenditure, along with a shift in substrate utilization from primarily burning carbohydrates to burning fat. And importantly, when caffeine was tested alone at the same dose, the effect disappeared. This confirms that the mechanism is not stimulation. It's a targeted biochemical activation of fat-burning pathways. On the microbiome side, dietary patterns rich in fiber and fermented foods have been consistently associated with higher levels of beneficial bacteria and increased production of short-chain fatty acids, which correlate with improved insulin sensitivity, lower inflammation, and reduced body fat percentage. These aren't isolated findings. They point to the same conclusion from multiple directions. When you change the signals, you change the system, and when you change the system, your body begins to respond in ways most people have never experienced. So if the science is clear, if these mechanisms are real and measurable, then the only question that matters now is this: what exactly do you need to start doing differently, starting today? Because this is where most people expect something complicated, restrictive, or extreme. But what makes this system so powerful is the opposite. It's not about doing more, it's about doing the right things consistently. At the center of this approach is not a single superfood, but a structured pattern of eating that targets all three systems we've just uncovered: your gut microbiome, your fat-burning pathways, and your appetite control. And when these systems are supported together, your body stops resisting change and starts moving in the right direction almost automatically. The first layer is what you might think of as your gut reset foundation. Fermented foods like natto and unpasteurized miso are not optional add-ons, they are core signals. They continuously introduce beneficial bacteria into your system, reinforcing the microbial balance that tells your body to reduce fat storage and inflammation. This isn't a one-time fix, it's a daily reinforcement of the environment your metabolism depends on. The second layer targets fat burning directly. Matcha green tea, consumed in its whole leaf powdered form, delivers a concentrated dose of catechins like EGCG that activate brown fat and increase energy expenditure. Alongside this, fatty fish such as salmon, mackerel, or sardines provide omega-3 fatty acids that help sustain this fat-burning activity and reduce systemic inflammation. Together, they create a metabolic state where burning energy becomes more efficient and more consistent throughout the day. The third layer addresses appetite control at its root. Foods rich in natural fiber seaweed, vegetables, and mixed grains like barley feed the beneficial bacteria that regulate hunger hormones. Instead of fighting cravings, your body begins to stabilize them. You feel satisfied on less food, not because you're forcing it, but because the signals have changed. And here's what makes this system different from anything most people have tried. It's not based on restriction, it's based on alignment. You're not cutting entire food groups. You're not relying on willpower. You're creating an internal environment where your body naturally shifts toward balance. Individually, each of these foods has an effect, but together they function as a coordinated system that reshapes how your body processes energy from the inside out. And once that system is in place, something unexpected begins to happen. The struggle starts to fade. The constant effort begins to decrease. And for the first time, it feels like your body is no longer working against you. But there's one critical detail most people overlook, even when they start using the right foods, and it's the difference between seeing results and seeing nothing at all. But here's the part almost everyone gets wrong, even when they're using the right foods. They unknowingly cancel out the very effects they're trying to create. Because this system doesn't just depend on what you eat, it depends on how and when you use it. And small mistakes at this stage can completely shut down the benefits. The first mistake is inconsistency. People try this for a few days, maybe a week, don't see dramatic changes, and stop. But your gut microbiome doesn't reset overnight. It takes weeks of consistent input to shift the balance of bacteria and stabilize the signals your body responds to. Without that consistency, the system never fully activates. The second mistake is preparation. High heat destroys what makes these foods effective. Boiling water can degrade the catechins in matcha and kill the beneficial bacteria in miso. If you're preparing these foods incorrectly, you're removing the very compounds that drive the results. The third mistake is relying on supplements instead of whole foods. Capsules isolate single compounds, but they miss the synergy fiber, enzymes, and live bacteria working together. Your body doesn't respond to fragments the same way it responds to complete biological signals. And finally, most people measure the wrong outcome. The scale doesn't tell you what's happening internally. You can be losing visceral fat and improving metabolic health long before body weight changes significantly. Fix these details and the system starts working. Ignore them and nothing changes. And once these pieces are in place, something deeper begins to shift, not just your body, but how you understand the problem itself. And this is the moment everything shifts, because once you understand how these systems actually work, you're forced to confront a truth most people never hear. You were never the problem, not your discipline, not your motivation, not some hidden flaw in your genetics. For years, you've been trying to fix your body from the outside, while the real issue has been happening internally at the level of signals your body has been faithfully following. Think about that for a second. Every time you felt like you were failing a diet, every time the weight came back, every time you told yourself you just needed to try harder, your body wasn't betraying you. It was protecting you based on the instructions it was receiving. If those instructions say store energy, increase hunger, conserve fuel, that's exactly what your body will do. Not because it's broken, but because it's doing its job. This is why so many people feel stuck. They push harder, restrict more, exercise longer, yet nothing changes in a meaningful, lasting way. Because effort alone cannot override a system that's been biologically set in the wrong direction. You can't outwork a signal problem. But here's where this becomes empowering instead of frustrating. If your body is responding to signals, then changing those signals changes everything. It means your metabolism is not fixed. It's adaptable, it's responsive, it's waiting for the right inputs to tell it what to do next. And this is exactly what we've been building toward. When you restore your gut microbiome, activate your fat-burning pathways, and stabilize your hunger signals, you're not forcing change. You're allowing your body to return to a state it already knows how to operate in, a state where fat storage decreases, energy increases, and control over your own body finally feels real again. You were never fighting your body. You were following the wrong instructions. And once those instructions change, the outcome has no choice but to change with them. So let's bring everything together because at this point, you're no longer looking at weight gain the same way. This was never just about calories, and it was never just about willpower. Dr. Nathaniel Lee, I want you to understand this clearly. Your body is governed by three core systems: your gut microbiome, your fat-burning pathways, and the biological signals that control hunger and metabolism. When those systems are disrupted, your body stores fat. When they're restored, your body begins to release it. And here's the part I want you to take with you. You are not broken. Your body is not failing you. It has simply been responding to the wrong signals, and that can be changed. Once you begin to correct those signals consistently, your metabolism doesn't resist you anymore. It starts working with you. And that shift alone can change everything about how you feel in your body. If this gave you a new perspective, I want you to take one simple step today. Start applying just one of these changes and pay attention to how your body responds. And if you found this valuable, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because I'll continue sharing evidence-based medical insights that help you take control of your health in a real practical way. Save this video so you can come back to it and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because your health is not a fixed outcome, it's a system you can influence. And the moment you start sending the right signals, your body begins to move in the right direction. Now, I'm curious, which part of your daily routine do you think has been sending the wrong signals to your body this entire time?